I'm back. Not as writing the wrong things, but as something else. A channel name which I have yet to come up with because I'm doing a bit of a rebrand here. This channel will no longer be the main channel. I made another one that is going to be far more frequent with uploads, but also a lot more low effort because my main thing I want to do on that channel is just document my writing journey. I don't really care about it being polished or anything. I just want my thoughts to get out there and to be as authentic as possible. Here, I'm going to continue ranting about Magic the Gathering, which brings me into this question. I don't think it's controversial to say that Magic has writing issues, but why? Why is that? Is it perhaps because focusing on planeswalkers who can go wherever they want, whenever they want, is perhaps a flawed concept? Or maybe it's due to the fact that we don't spend enough time in any given setting. Or it might be creative bankruptcy. Or it might be the fact that most of the authors they bring on for these stories now specialize in weird YA fairy romance in the same vein as A Court of Thorns and Roses, which to me is a sign that we are in the darkest timeline. But that's a joke from 2016. So it could be any of those equally. I, however, believe that there is a deeper, much more malevolent issue that plagues Magic's story, that has plagued it for much longer than any of the other issues have. And that being, Magic has a comic writing issue where every single time they make a new story, they bring on someone, usually, who has never written for Magic before. Which means we're getting a completely new interpretation of the characters we've seen before. Sometimes can be good, most of the time, bad. I'll just think about it for a minute. Every time someone, let's say a Johnny gets written, every single time, it's a new interpretation. Usually, because comics suffer from this issue a lot too, because you'll get issues where Batman is super dark, willing to kill people, like, is super like, you know, the Snyder version, essentially. Or you'll get situations where Batman is a genuine hero, and despite all the darkness associated with his persona, he is genuinely still a good person and a kind, loving soul. Not a lot in common with those two interpretations of Batman, but because Batman's so iconic, you can kind of forgive them a little bit, because it's Batman. Everyone generally knows what Batman is like. But then you have Magic. Magic does not have the same privilege as comics do of being able to go, oh, well, this author's interpretation of Jace is wildly different from this author's interpretation of Jace, but it's still the same character, trust me. Look, he's got the blue cloak on and everything. And it's like, you're not, like you can't really do that with your characters at the state you're in right now. You're not 100 years old yet. Like, I think because of this, we are unable to see, like, deeper character, like, the things that are consistent across every interpretation are very surface level. Very surface level. It's mostly just looks and powers. If it comes to personality, it's things like Jace is smart, Vivian likes animals, stuff like that. And that does not, for a good character, make. I will use Jace in an elongated example of this real quickly. Just so you have an idea of what this is like. Now, our beloved poster boy is, in his current state, no more than the resident puzzle solver. He does not have any motivations. He lost his job as Guild Pact. He doesn't seem to really want it back. He remembers all of his past on Vryn and doesn't seem to care particularly much. And any other narrative thread he could have is either too weak or too tied up to actually lead to entertaining stories. So now we have just a guy who sits in his apartment and waits for other stories to drag him into it if it involves something remotely brain-related. And I blame Ixalan for this. Because Ixalan is sort of where a lot of his narrative ties just started getting, like, wasted, more or less. Jace and Vraska used to really hate each other, and during Ixalan, they started to really like each other. And then after War of the Spark, it just kind of petered out to where now they're just kind of neutral about one another, and they don't really talk at all. Or even, like, think about one another. Jace used to not know where he came from, and in Ixalan, he remembered where he came from. That's a thing that's been missing from his head since he was 15 years old. And he does not care. But this comic writing issue that I brought up before is not necessarily a symptom of the era that I believe where Magic really started to just drop off in quality. It arises from a much deeper place than that, even all the way back to Lorwyn. But again, this is because they have multiple people working on all the same character, and they're allowed to... There seems to be no real, like, continuity about how Jace is supposed to be, aside from he's a mind mage who likes smart thing. Like, have you ever read the Wikipedia, the wiki page for Jace describing his appearance and characteristics, or the page on Wizards' official website that describes Jace? No, probably not. But if you did, you know that it is extremely vague. Super vague. Not even like... And that seems to be what they're using that seems to be what they're giving these writers to go, okay, this is our character, please write him. It's like, what do you expect? What do you expect from that? I mean, granted, a lot of these writers do... They kind of, with the whole having narrative hooks that you could use for him and then deciding not to use them in such a way to where if you were to bring it up later, it'd be kind of awkward if you did it. Like, at this point, Jace has known about his family for so long that, like, if he suddenly cared about that, it would be kind of weird. But I wouldn't put it past them to just do that on a whim. But fine. Whatever. It's not really the writer's fault here. It is a little bit, but it's not entirely their fault. And I want to bring up from the moment of Jace's inception as a character to the current place where he is, every character change has been a complete accident. Completely. Now, granted, I'll get into this shortly, but he did go through a character arc. Like a genuine character arc, which is rare. That's really rare for Magic characters. Especially since it happened over the course of like 10 years. That's some long-form storytelling. But the thing is, it's not exactly that great. I'll go into it. So when Jace was first invented as a character alongside the Lorwyn 5, Jace's whole like persona, I guess, was based around the question of who would be able to and be willing to completely restructure someone's mind. If you think about it, that's kind of a fate worse than death. So naturally, Jace was a bit of an anti-hero, a little bit of a villain almost. From 2007, when he was invented, to 2010 and his Boogeyman appearance as Jace the Mind Sculptor, Jace worked for the Consortium, the Infinite Consortium under Tezzeret. So he was not exactly a good guy. He did a lot of evil things, really more just for his job, but he didn't really give a shit. And that was kind of his charm. Is he was a bit of an edgelord. He was a bit of an edgelord, but he's still kind of a badass too. There was an air of mystery to him. And everyone likes the bad guys more. Just fucking whatever. This changed in Agents of Artifice. So in Agents of Artifice, a new guy got brought on. I know his first name is Ari. I do not remember his last name. I'll put the cover up here. In Agents of Artifice, Jace lost some of that mystery, and it got switched out for more of like a lost puppy vibe, because he was just kind of like brought into the Consortium kind of against his will. But he still retained a level of that like badassery from before. He was still willing to get into fights. He was still willing to just completely obliterate someone's memories. And the book was good because his motivations were pretty much entirely personal. So he didn't have to save the world or anything. And even though that can be done well, it's overused in Magic storytelling. So Jace's entire moral framework by the end of that book is completely like fucking scattered to the wind. If it could be said he had one in the first place, which I don't even know that. But it's boom. Framework completely restructured, which means when he comes back in Return to Ravnica, the motivations that the writers of Return to Ravnica gave him were completely understandable. Because the only thing he cared about in Return to Ravnica, at least at the beginning, was his friend Imara. That makes a lot of sense. That's a reason for him to get involved with the story. I don't see why that's not I don't see how that's like, it's good. It's pretty good. And he goes through this thing, he gets roped into the whole Guild Pact stuff, and he ends up becoming the Guild Pact. And while they don't tell us this, we have to kind of infer it, I guess. The job gives him a little more sense of responsibility, and by the beginning of Battle for Zendikar, he's feeling, I'm a little guilty for releasing the Eldrazi, or at least my part in it, so maybe I should go help out. And this is the point where Jace goes from lawfully neutral, I guess, Guild Pact of just like, okay, I do my job, and my job happens to be keeping the peace, to now, like, hero, more or less. Battle for Zendikar and Shadows over Innistrad basically turn him into, like, this superhero type, I guess, like all the Gatewatch members, but he suffered immensely from that, which, in concept, that's a good idea. But in execution, it went terribly wrong. The entire arc reads like a big accident. Like, it all happens accidentally. It all feels like one big accident because it's three completely separate eras separated by several years, written by completely different people. Which, fine. But Jace doesn't really change on screen. All of his change, all the things that happen to him, all his, like, moral, demeanor, philosophical changes, all of that happens off screen. Or if it does happen on screen, it's only like the beginning of his change. The process isn't there, which is the hard work that goes into crafting an emotionally resonant character arc. Without the process, and if you just do the result, it's like no one really cares that much. You know? Because you don't invest them in the process. And this is something... So it's not really he went through a character arc. That's just one interpretation of it. It's really more based on what we were given that he just changed. that his character was just changed to suit the story. So everything that's consistent about him is he wears the blue cloak, he changes the memories, and he's horny for Liliana, I guess. I don't know. It's very surface level stuff. I can't really give you a actual character, because smart is not a character trait. Okay, let me get that out of the way. Being smart is not a character trait. So I can't really tell you even a character trait that Jace retains throughout all three versions of him. Regardless, you can see this with many, many other Magic characters. Chandra is angry. Sometimes she wants to be less angry. Other times she wants to be more angry. Sometimes she wants to be gay. Other times the writers say otherwise. Weissman. Nissa likes nature. She also conveniently forgot she used to be racist. Gideon is a normal dude with a bit of charisma and a bunch of magic shields, and everyone loves how much of a inspiring leader, also known to us as being a normal guy, he is. Because let's be honest, most of what Gideon does is pretty common sense, or just, it's the right thing to do. So you don't really get any nuance there. It's just two extremes. Garrick also loves nature. He's mad about it. You see how I can't really say anything else about the characters because that stuff isn't consistent with them throughout, because that's the only stuff that's consistent with them throughout the entirety of their stories. Is everything else is changed or changeable. Even Liliana, who had like a little bit of an arc, I'll give them credit. They started a pretty decent arc in Dominaria, and it had another big beat in fucking War of the Spark when Gideon died. Except after that, Bellatrix Witherbloom immediately solved Liliana's arc for her by giving her a 10-minute lecture about it. So now she doesn't really do anything aside from teach. As such, I've decided on my new project, my 6th novel. I know what I'm going to do. I am going to attempt to rectify a lot of the storytelling mistakes that Wizards has made with some of our favorite characters by making a not fan fiction. It's not a fan fiction because I'm not a fan. I'll put it that way. But I am overtly taking characters from Magic, making them legally distinct, and then putting them into a fantasy novel of their own, which I hope will allow me to explore some of the interesting concepts that could come out of characters like Jace or Liliana, or Gideon even, and maybe give Wizards that little kick in the pants, assuming that book reaches them at all. It gives them a little kick in the pants to, up their quality, or maybe give me a shot. I think I could do gangbusters, but that's just me. I will be making sort of a journal about this, just a vlog maybe about the steps going into it, and I'll describe the world and everything and what I'm taking from Magic, what I'm changing, the problems I'm finding with it, and I'll put that all into videos on my other channel, my more writing focused channel. If you want to see those, go there. Whereas here, I just want to describe the problem I'm seeing with Magic storytelling in general. And by being one person, I kind of just fix that. So that's cool. Meanwhile, this channel will, as I said before, be turned into more of a rant channel where I just make videos about Magic or whatever else I'm angry about at the time. Yeah, that's about all I wanted to say. Hope you guys have a nice day. Look forward to more content because I am definitely going to try. I'm gonna try. No promises. To make more content now that I've decided I want to put less effort and editing into it because that always makes me procrastinate doing it. So I think the content will still be as good because it's really all just from my mouth. Like, I can't edit good. I can't, but I put an inordinate amount of effort into it. So, yeah. All right. Well, see you in the next one. Bye.